politically, as you alluded to, the GOP current candidates, they're also in a tough spot. What the hell do we say about this?
I mean, this is exactly what we, not to pat ourselves on the back too much, but this is what we predicted. When we saw the way the Mar-a-Lago raid went down, and the fact that they immediately came out, all of his would-be rivals, and bent the knee to his framing of events. And you'll recall Ron DeSantis waited a couple days, and he caught hell for not immediately coming out to Trump's defense. So I guess many of them sort of learned that lesson, and they're coming out. You know, DeSantis was much quicker to make a statement here, and you know, once again, takes Trump's side. His rival, the guy he's trying to defeat, he takes his side in this whole battle. Let's take a listen a little bit of what Ron DeSantis had to say.
My view was, well, gee, you know, as a naval officer, if I would have taken classified to my apartment, I would have been court-martialed in a New York minute. And yet they seem to not care about that. And is there a different standard for a Democrat Secretary of State versus a former Republican president? I think there needs to be one standard of justice in this country. Let's enforce it on everybody and make sure we all know the rules. You can't have one faction of society weaponizing the power of the state against factions that it doesn't like.
So he's trying to be a little bit careful there, right? He does acknowledge,
smart play.
He does acknowledge that, you know, if he, when he was in the military, had done something similar, it would have been a big problem for him. But ultimately, you know, he goes directly to the favorite talking point of Trump's allies, which is the what about Hillary, what about Biden, et cetera.
Yeah, exactly. And he even tweeted out, you know, the weaponization of federal law enforcement represents a mortal threat to free society. We for years witnessed an uneven application of the law depending on the political affiliation. Why so zealous in pursuing Trump, yet so passive about Hillary about Hillary or Hunter? The DeSantis administration will restore rule of law in this country. It's like, so Trump, Hillary, Trump, all 2016 vibes, and that's why I should be president. Now, on the merits, look, he probably would do a better job than Trump in actually reforming the Justice Department. In terms of politics, yeah, it's a huge issue because every single candidate is now litigating a set of facts around their chief opponent. And there really is, politically, as you know, Krystal, you never want to be talking about somebody else. You want to be talking about you and your vision for the country. You do not want to be on the grounds of talking about some set third party. We can do that. We're the news. We're political analysts. We're not actually at the center of the story. But that's not the story that you're trying to do when you're saying that's why you should vote for me. It's exactly just actually, if anything, it gives Trump even more power, which we see in a lot of the polling that we'll be getting to soon.
Trump is the central issue in the Republican primary, and he's in a lot of ways the central issue in the country, and it's in a lot of ways the worst thing about having Trump dominate our politics. And so, you know, every candidate in the Republican primary is forced into this impossible position of either backing him up or opposing him, which is an even worse position to be in. But there's just no beating being actually Donald Trump, right? Like the best stance you can take on the issue of Trump is literally being Donald Trump within the Republican primary. And that's why I mean, I just basically think this primary is over before it's begun, because this piece of, you know, this indictment is probably not the last indictment. We're going to have all kinds of news about this going through the court system and what are the motions and what else is uncovered and what's Trump saying about it. So this tiny window of time that we had where candidates were launching, they were getting a little bit of media coverage and trying to make the most of that and maybe getting a couple point bump in the poll, it's basically done. So this is the landscape that all of them are facing. We put together, you know, a few other responses that are kind of like across the gamut of how other Republicans are dealing with this within the primary. Let's take a listen to the other responses.
And today, what we see is a justice system where the scales are weighted.
But today, I'm calling on the Attorney General to stand before the American people and explain why this was necessary in his words. Attorney General Merrick Garland, stop hiding behind the special counsel and stand before the American people and explain why this indictment went forward.
I disagree with the allegations. I just think I do not believe those allegations because of, I think, the intellectual dishonesty in that indictment. So I think the federal court is actually, I think, based on the precedent of the Clinton sock drawer case, where effectively Judge Jackson said that it is at the president's, her language, not mine, sole discretion as to what is and is not covered as a presidential record.
And Vivek has gone probably the furthest of anyone. He immediately came out and said, if I was president, I'd pardon Trump. instantly.
Smart.
Right? He gets on the record right away. And, you know, he is even willing to say, I don't agree with the allegations at all. I mean, he's the one who's willing to go the furthest out on a limb, potentially positioning himself maybe for a cabinet secretary position or just to be, you know, a favorite of the Republican base and whatever sort of accolades and opportunities that brings you. But even Mike Pence, you know, he did make some sort of like tepid, vague criticism of Trump with regard to these charges. But what he's really trying to do is position himself to also be on Trump's side on this, even though in other areas, you know, with regards to January 6th, et cetera, he's been willing to be critical of Trump. But it just shows you that there is a real limit to how far people feel like
Yeah, because
go.
people don't care about this. We're about to talk about the polling, but you know it's very clear. Some Republicans, not most, but some, actually were pissed off about what Trump did on January 6th. On the documents case, this is an open and shut, like politically has absolutely no impact. Doesn't mean it's not important. It certainly is, but just politically, that's how it's being internalized. And it is not a surprise that the two candidates who poll some of the worst in the entire Republican Party, they're the only ones who are even willing to be critical of Trump here on the documents case. Asa Hutchinson and Governor Chris Christie. Here's what they had to say.
You are calling on Donald Trump to end his campaign in the wake of this second indictment. Why?
For the good of the country and for the good of the office of presidency, this is unprecedented that we have a former president criminally charged for mishandling classified information.
So everyone wants to blame the prosecutors. And look, I think the prosecution, DOJ, is at fault for not charging Hillary Clinton. It's at fault for what happened in the Russia investigation because it undercut people's faith and confidence in the system. But each case has to be looked at on its own merits. And the facts that are laid out here are damning in terms of Donald Trump's conduct. And that's what I think we as a party should be looking at.
So, look, Chris Christie, Asa Hutchinson, as I alluded to, there are already some of literally not only the lowest polling, but also the highest level of people who said they will not even consider them to be president. And again, the issue is, Krystal, whenever they speak, it's basically indistinguishable from CNN and MSNBC primetime programming. Well, the Republican base hates those people. The reason why Mike Pence and DeSantis and Vivek are all being smart politically is that in the eyes of the Republican base, this is an illegitimate prosecution. If you want to win their votes in a primary, even being considered as president of the United States, that's exactly what you have to do.
Yeah, but you're not going to beat Trump by.
No, you're not.
I mean,
I agree with you.
it's just like, if your goal is to be in good with the Republican base, get some, you know, Fox News or Newsmax or whatever, like contributorship, or position yourself maybe for a cabinet post in a future Trump administration, you're doing the right thing. If you're trying to win the Republican primary, it doesn't matter what you say. It's not going to work out. I mean, Trump is just this just shows, I think, to everyone what a dominant, controlling force Trump is in the Republican primary, for sure, but in American politics overall. And, you know, he is the dividing line. So it's not a great landscape for them. You know, listen, with Asa Hutchinson, I don't really understand his play, to be honest with you. I don't really have a great feel for the Asa career or where he's going with this or what he wants. Maybe he wants to be on CNN. Maybe he just, you know, is a man of conscience and feels like this is my responsibility and I believe in this party and the principles and I want to say my piece, you know, whatever, come what may. Chris Christie is in the race because he wants to be a wrecking ball, and he's unafraid. You know, he launched with a very vigorous attack against Trump. He may have a large enough ego to delude himself into thinking that this could work out for him, but his primary goal here is to try to annihilate Trump the way he annihilated Marco Rubio in potentially like a kamikaze mission. So if that's your goal, then, you know, this makes some sense, and he already has lost the favor of the Republican base. So in terms of future career prospects, it's better for him to be in good with, like, you know, CNN, MSNBC, NBC, mainstream press, and corporate America than to try to, you know, walk back over the bridge to the conservative media ecosystem, because that ship has ultimately sailed. So I understand from all of their perspectives what they're doing, and it may make sense for them in terms of their future career prospects. None of it is going to work out for any of them to be president of the United States.
Absolutely not.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.